recording.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. So during the last session, just 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to go over the first 3 pathways. Currently, if you're still working on them, that's perfectly fine. Today, we are going to be trying out something slightly different where we'll be coding together. So just to make it more practical and engaging, we're going to be working on the pathways, this week's pathway together. So yes, before we begin, yeah, so the prerequisites knowledge is that you have completed session 1, the beginner bit, but again, as I've said, like if you haven't, that's okay. Remember to have your headphones, a good internet connection, and again, an Android device is optional. As you can see, we're able to set up an emulator on our devices. Yeah, so let's start off by recapping on what we did last time. Joel, do you want to share what you were able to learn during the last session? Just anything, you can drop it in the chat, feel free to unmute.
While I wasn't present during the last session, I did learn some past pathway that the syntax for Kotlin is a bit different from Python. So it's a function, and that's definitely new syntax that I'm getting used to as well.
Okay, nice. So able to learn about like how to write, or rather how the Kotlin syntax looks like and how it compares to a language you've interacted with before. So that's like Python. Okay, nice. Okay, so yeah, just like another recap of what we did. So we definitely did go over writing and running a program in Kotlin, how to set up Android Studio on your computer. So I'm glad to see that you have that set up. There's also how to start a project from a template in Android Studio. So I'm not sure if you're able to do that yet, but that's also a key element in the pathway from before. Then how to run an Android app, so on the emulator. So that's basically being able to see the changes that you're making to your code and how that affects how your application looks like. So that has to do with playing around with text. So from the example of how you can change the hello world text to something else that is different and see that presented on your mobile device. So yeah, in this session, we'll be completing Unit 1 of the Android Basics in Kotlin course by finishing Pathway 4, which is to add a button to an app. So in this pathway, we'll be building an interactive app called the Dice Roller. So I'll be doing it together. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and we'll just code as we go. So no one gets left behind, and we can have something really cool at the end of it. And again, contributions are open, ways you can make this our own and play around with it. So yeah. So at the end of this pathway, there'll be a quiz. And if you pass the quiz, you're going to earn another badge that you'll add to your developer profile. So excuse the schedule. I set this up in Nairobi time, but everything is basically just an hour behind. So first we have this presentation, like we did the last time, to cover logistics and high-level concepts, and then we'll move into working on the pathways. In this case, it's going to be a group kind of thing. Then we'll have a short break and continue. So let's dive into some of the high-level concepts that we'll be learning. So to build this app, you'll need to understand what an activity is in Android. And an activity is the part of your app that presents a window that can display the app's content. So in this case, we have this image of a dice and the button roll, whatever's been stored in that is called an activity. So in the Dice Roller app you'll be building, there's only one activity, and that's called the main activity. So when you open up the app, the main activity launches. The layout is drawn on the screen, and the user can start interacting with the app. So you'll be modifying this main activity by adding Kotlin code or what should happen when users tap on the button in the app, etc. Yeah, so as you write Kotlin code for your app, you'll need to understand what classes and objects are. So this is something that we interacted with in object-oriented programming for CS students on the call who did Python before. So that's programming 1, and I think currently programming 2 for some of you. But you can think of a class like a blueprint, as a blueprint. So it contains instructions for how to create something. So from the dice blueprint, you can create actual dice. Yeah. So more specifically, the dice class contains details like what properties a dice has, example, the number of sides that it has, how it behaves, that is, can it be rolled. The great advantage of having this dice class is that now you can be able to create different instances of this specific dice object. As you can see in the diagram. So we have the object instance, the first one, and you have another second one and a third one, and it's all coming from this blueprint which we had initially. So this makes your code more organized and easier to maintain. So I want to play this short video, or if it doesn't work, I'll just send you the link to it. But as you continue to learn more about programming in this pathway and beyond, you'll run into challenges that you may feel overwhelmed or intimidated by, and that's normal, and it's known as imposter syndrome, so which many people in the industry deal with. Yeah, so we want you to be aware of it because there are small actions you can take to overcome it. So the video will talk about it more. So just let me know if you can hear what's happening. I'll share my audio.
Invariably, you will land on a project where you don't.
Okay, just a quick check. Can you hear?
Invariably, you will land.
Yeah, you can hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Invariably, you will land on a project where you don't know much about what's involved. It's completely okay to say, I have not the slightest idea to solve this problem. This is very normal, and it is normal for every single person.
I remember still just starting full-time work and realizing, wow, I'm not sure I know how to work with big code bases, or I don't know this language, and it's frightening, and there's a lot you don't know. Find a little nugget you can take on and take it from there.
There's a lot of times when you run into areas where you don't know what to do, and you feel like you can't make it all come together. And the most important thing is to not get caught up in that. Sometimes the best thing you can do is actually just take a little time off of a problem and then circle back a little bit later when you have a fresher mind, and then it'll be easy.
Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you're a fake and somehow you snuck in and you don't deserve to be where you are. There are so many times at work where I get projects to work on, and internally I feel like there's no way I can do this. I'm totally going to fail at it. The only person expecting me to fail is myself. And so if I can get over that, I can gain more confidence and do anything that I want to do.
You have just asked me to code up something or to fix a bug. I don't even know where to begin. The best people I know learn to live with uncertainty, fear, doubt, confusion, and they just plow right ahead.
Failure it's going to happen if you take risks. And taking risks is important to succeed. I have a few tips on how to cope with that. Number one is try to see the silver lining of failure. Number two is, I think preparing is really important. It will help you a lot in taking on risks that are more manageable and being able to succeed more often.
I think it's absolutely vital that when you go into building something, you accept that sometimes you're going to be wrong. If I had an opportunity to sort of go back in time and tell a younger version of myself, like just as I was getting started, what should I do? I think the main thing would be to experiment more and just always try and be learning new things.
You don't have to have all of the knowledge right now, but just realize that you can always learn it. And the whole coding process is a learning process.
So if you're in a class and it's been a while and you made progress, first of all, be proud of that progress. And you find yourself now feeling a little stuck, it's okay. Being overwhelmed is not a bad thing. That's my first advice. It means there's a lot of information coming your way, and you're so lucky that that is the case.
Okay. Yeah, so that was just really, oh, I just realized the quality wasn't the best, but sorry. Yeah, that was just a basic, just a video to help you remember like why you're coding, and that for the most part you will run into challenges, and that's okay. So let's get started. So I know you mentioned that you're still on pathway 3. So I think what I'll do is just take a few minutes to work on that. I'll do the same, and then in about 10 minutes, I'll share my screen and you can move together from there. I hope that sounds good. Anyways, it's okay. So in this case, we don't have an integer variable. What we just an integer variable, we just have the actual range provided here. There's also another way of writing it out. So what we'll basically be storing our random number in is this variable here. So let's just add that to our row method. Yeah. Okay. So now let's see what happens. So the first step says to actually roll the actual dice that we have in the main, we'll call on the roll method. And from there, we should get a random number response. It lets us know that this is the number that we get from the dice. So what we're basically going to do is using the dot notation, just call roll onto my first dice. So here, my first dice dot roll. Yes. Okay. So what you expect is that this line above it is going to give us the 6 sides, and this one is going to give us a random number between 1 and 6, which should be our play for the dice. So just run that. Yeah, 6 and 4. Awesome. So yeah, I think that's basically clear. Like now we understand that the dice has different characteristics which you now call the sides, and it has a function which is to roll, and the method which is to roll rather, and then we've been able to create an instance of the dice class. So yep. So yeah, I think we'll move slightly quicker just because of time. So let's see. So run your dice rolls value. So currently you are printing out the random number in your row. Yeah. So the function, oh yeah, sorry. Another thing I didn't mention is that like in the row method, we have the print line here. So this is, in case you're wondering why we just called on roll and we didn't necessarily encapsulate it in like a print like this. It's just because the roll method already evokes or calls the print line method, or function rather, so we don't need to print line here. Just a quick by the way. Okay, so but sometimes it's more useful to return the result of a function to whatever call the function. For example, you could assign the result of row method to a variable and then move a player by that amount. So let's see how that's done. So in the main modify the line that says my first row, create a value called dice roll, a variable, set it equal to the return value of row. So in this case, it's going to be returning that the string Yeah, this doesn't do anything yet, but the row method doesn't return anything yet as well. So in order for this code to work as intended, row has to return something. So in the previous code labs, so now what we're going to do is specify the return value of row. And yeah, run this code. You'll see an error because you changed a return expression required. Okay, yeah. So we won't be having a return expression here in our row method. Instead, it's printing out something. So what he initially said is that let's have int, which is specifying return an integer value, but we're not doing that yet. So just add that into your method and run, and then you should see that error that they're talking about. Exactly. Yeah. So for us to fix that, we will remove the print line statement and then return the random number instead. Now run it. We shouldn't see anything apart from 6. Yeah, but it is returning the random number. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so now for us to see the what our actual values is that we'll adjust our print line statement here. So to read your dash sided dice rolled dash exclamation point. So let's modify that. I'll just take this to the line above. And then we'll print that. Your dash like this sided. I'll go back to that already. Dice rules $sign calibrates exclamation mark. So remember how we got the sides? It's my first dice dot sides. So that's what we're going to be adding in there. My first dice sides. And then here, dice row, we assign the result here to the variable dice row. So let's just do that first. Yeah, and this will be my first dice sides, and this will read dice row. Once you run that, yeah, run. And let's run it again to see if we get another random value. We do. Just remove this space. Okay. So yeah, that's it for this one. Again, in the chat, just let me know if you could. Yeah, one if you're okay, two if you need me to explain something. Okay, I'll take that as it's okay. So, before I continue, does anyone see anything? Any thoughts? Is this going okay? Anything I can work on as we keep going? Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, so the fifth step is to change the number of sides on your dice. So not all dice, okay, yeah, definitely not all dice will have 6 sides. So dice come in all shapes and sizes, 4-sided, 8-sided, 120-sided. I have never seen that, but I'm guessing it's possible. So in your dice class, in the roll method, we're going to change the hard-coded 1 to 6 range to use sides instead. So that, okay, so that the range is thus from 1 to the number of sides. And then we apply the random function onto it, and it just becomes more, what's the word, dynamic. Yeah, so there's a difference between hard-coded and dynamic. Hard-coded is when you give fixed values to variables or anything or just something specific, but making something dynamic or code dynamic is when it takes in different multiple inputs. So that's all we're going to work on. Alrighty, so in the row method, we'll change the 6 to read sides that way. It shouldn't really affect anything yet. Just get another random value between 1 and 6, and this should remain as 6 as expected. So then the second one is that the main function, in the main function below, after printing the dice roll, change the sides of, we'll just set the size to something different. So copy and paste it. Okay, yeah. Print statement below after. Yeah, so replace the printing of, sorry, I feel like I'm skipping through it, but copy and paste the existing print statement below after where you change the number of sides. Replace the printing of dice roll with printing the result of calling the roll method on my first dice. Okay. So it should look something like this. Yeah, I think if you observe, there's this thing that I learned like a lot earlier in my coding journey, and that there's an importance of writing out code by yourself, like instead of copy pasting it. Like in the sense that, like, now that I'm writing out this code and I'm not particularly like just copying and pasting like what's been written, it creates some kind of it builds on a muscle in your brain that has to do with like recalling stuff, and it's usually like really helps, because when you do coding interviews or challenges, when you're trying to learn that next big software engineering role, then being able to work on a problem and build up algorithms without referencing from different places, through copying and pasting, it really does come a long way. So again, just something small that you can keep practicing, especially now as it's earlier on, and use it to, just see where that goes. So that was just a brief, my 2 cents. First dice, dot sides, then rules. Something's happening to my video. I hope you can still hear me though.
Yeah, we can hear you. Christine, I think we have someone who's just joined the call. So maybe you just take them through, like in a nutshell, what you've done so far. And maybe if they can follow through.
Cool.
Like just talk through.
All right. So hi, Martin. Welcome to the awesome Kotlin learning session. So basically what we're working on, welcome. So basically what we've been working on right now is writing out the logic for building out a dice game. So what we're doing is working on building out the blueprint for our dice, which is essentially a class. So it has characteristics such as the number of sets that it has, and it also has certain things that a dice normally does, which is to roll. So that comes in as a method here. So this is essentially our blueprint for the dice. And then what we did now is create an instance of this dice and call it my first dice. And then still within our main function, we stored the row, which is essentially going to be a random number that you get between 1 to 6 in this case. That's 1 to the number of sides of our dice. So the number that we get is going to be the number that appears on the top face of our dice. So the very first part was printing out the number of sides that our dice has and just the number that's rolled out. So what we are currently working on is changing the number of sides of our dice from just being the usual 6 to 20 and seeing what that prints out. Is it clear?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Cool. So in this case, it's going to be my first dice.roll. So instead of evoking or printing out the dice roll, which was stored here, we're just going to call the roll method on my dice again and see if we get a different response on the two different statements that are going to be printed out. First dice. Okay, that looks okay. Okay, can you guys see that? So in the very first one, we have a 6-sided dice and the value is 5. In the second one, we have a 20-sided dice and the roll number is 13. So clearly, the value that you get when you call roll on my first dice the very first time is going to be different from what you get when you call it again when you change the number of sides. Cool. Yes, sir. So the idea of a class is to represent a thing, often something physical in the real world. So in this case, it's a dice class, and it represents an actual physical dice. So in the real world, dice cannot change the number of sides. If you want a different number of sides, you need to get a different dice. So programmatically, this means that instead of changing the sides property for an existing dice object instance, you should create a new dice object instance with a number of sides that you need. Yeah. So in this task, you're going to modify the dice class so that you can specify the number of sides when you create a new dice. So change the dice class definition so you can apply the number of sides. This is similar to how a function can accept arguments and inputs. Exactly. So this is what we initially talked about when we said that a function or a method can have parameters within the parentheses, and that's exactly what we're going to do for our dice class. Yeah, thanks, Kate. If you want to join the program, the playground rather, you can use the link that you shared. Okay, so inside the dice class, delete the sides variable because now we have it as a parameter in our class. So we'll just be left with the method roll. Okay, so that looks nice and neat. Yeah, so if you run this code, you're going to get some errors as expected, because now when we are initializing or creating an instance of our dice class, it needs to take in a certain argument. And in this case, it's the number of sides that the dice is going to have. So let's just run that and see the error that we get and how we can fix it. Yeah, so no value passed for parameter number of sides. So let's just give that a value and call it 6 for the average dice. And when we run that, we still have an error because, as you can see, we're referencing the, the sides property, which we cleared from our class. So let's see how we can resolve that. Delete the code that changes. Okay, yeah, in the print, yeah, change the sides to the number of sides. Yeah. So this is going to, so doing fast dice dot number of sides is going to call the property number of sides in the dice. What else did it tell us to do? Yes. Below that, delete the code that changes size to 20 because the variable does not exist anymore. Yes. Then delete the print line that also follows underneath. So in the end, we should have something that looks a little like this. So running that. Oops. Let's change this to number of sides as well. Okay, that should be good. So after printing the first dice row, add code to create a second dice specifically. So we're just going to use the same exact format we did for the first, for creating the first instance, which had 6 sides, and apply that same concept to making one with 20 sides. And then when we print, instead of printing out the dice roll as in the first case, we're just going to call on the roll method. Yeah. So what we're going to do is now create the second dice. Again, guys, remember what we talked about, or rather what I said. Practice writing out the code and less of copying and pasting. Okay, so let me see. Yes. So now we have created a second instance of a second instance of our dice. And just a nifty thing that I've done here is that since the text was going beyond the editor, I wanted not to have that. So what I did was concatenate two strings, and how you do that is with the plus sign. And yeah, basically just observe the correct spacing in between there and ensure that you have quotes on both of your now split strings. Yeah, so that's about it. Okay, number 7. When writing code, concise is better. So you can get rid of the random number variable and return the random number directly. So essentially, yeah, that's really true, because over here we had created a variable random number. So instead of just having that, you can just return whatever value you get directly, because it's essentially the same thing. I mean, you always need to also try and keep running your code so that you know during the debugging process, it makes it a lot easier to, if you're working on code or development, like making sure that you keep testing to see that your code is still working at any major change that you make, just makes it all that easier when you have a problem that is not clearly stated in the error log. Yeah. So in the second print statement, you put the call to get the random number into the string template. You can get rid of the dice roll. So effectively what we did for the second dice, so we just directly call the roll method. We can do the same over here, other than creating another variable that stores that. That way, and because I want to make this more readable, just continue that way, and run it. Should have the same information. Awesome. Yeah, so that's about it. Yep, we're on the right track. Yeah, so the summary, we have the called random function, which is called on an int range type of data type, and you can generate a random number between 1 and 6, for example, or within whatever range that you give it. So yeah, we know that classes are blueprints for objects, and they can have properties and behaviors implemented as variables and functions respectively. So an instance of a class represents an object, often a physical object such as dice. Yeah, you can call the function on the object and change its attribute. So yeah, you can supply values to a class when you're creating an instance. Yeah, so this is called providing like an argument for a parameter number of sets that you initially gave. In this case, it's of the value integer, data type integer, sorry. So functions can return something and specify the data type to be returned in the function definition as a return statement in the function body to return something. So in this case, we have our function example, which should return an integer. And in this case, we see that we are in fact returning an integer of the value 5. Yeah. So here's what you can do in your further exploration as you continue to learn more on Kotlin. So yeah, the practices are optional, but they're really good. So if you do have the chance, you can give your dice class another attribute like color and create multiple instances of the dice with different numbers, sets, and colors. You can also create a coin class and give it the ability to flip. So create an instance of the class and flip some coins, it's either heads or tails and stuff. So that can also give you an idea of what your range is going to be between, in this case, 1 and 2. And then you can apply the random function to that and flip your coin to either get heads or tails based on what you assign it. Cool. So we finished the classes one. So what's next is to create an interactive dice roller app. Let me know. Do you want us to continue to the next one, or do you have any questions? Or should we save that for? Okay, just type your thoughts in the chat. Let me know if you want us to go into building the app. Which will, yeah, if we proceed with it, we'll do it for 20 minutes, and whatever's left you can carry over. Okay. Thanks, Martin. And Joel, do you concur? Okay. Kate, nice. All right. Awesome. I hope you're loving the session so far or enjoying it. Okay, so before we begin, in this code lab, we're going to be creating the dice roll Android app, where users can click the button and in the app to, click the button in the app to roll the dice. The outcome of the roll will be shown in the text view on the screen. So you'll use the layout editor in Android Studio to build your app layout, and then write some Kotlin code to implement what happens when the button is clicked. So please make sure that you have Android Studio set up. If you're not familiar with Textviews, still don't worry. And we'll also be looking at how to modify different attributes. So yeah, what you'll be learning is how to add a button to an Android app, the behavior, and how to open and modify an activity, to modify the activity code of an app. So, and also how to use something called toast messages, which is something really simple but cute, and how to update the content of your text view while the app is still running. Yeah, so this is essentially what we're going to be building for now. A button, and once clicked, we should be getting a random number. Oh, thanks. So let's begin, guys. We'll create a new project together. I'll demonstrate the same thing. So what you need to take note of is that it's going to be a new project with an empty activity, dice roller, API level is of 19, which is KitKat. And yeah, we'll just call it dice roller, then we'll run the app and see what that looks like. So let us fire up our Android Studio. Okay, so what I'm basically doing is just waiting for everything to load, because I can see there's something here saying loading, and I'm sure there's probably something on here, yeah, with my Gradle or whatever that needs just some few seconds of patience. So please do the same, so that like once, so that once everything is loaded, it's smooth. So we'll go to File, New, sorry, just give me a second. Oh my gosh, guys. Teachers really have it hard, and speakers, like, your voice just disappears out of nowhere. And it's like, why are you doing this? Anyways. So click on empty activity and then hit next. And we're going to name ours dice roller. And we'll, let me see. Oh yeah, we do have 19, which is KitKat. I actually lost count, guys. Like, you can clearly see that like the 100 APIs moved from marshmallow, nugget, Oreo, pie. No, they're just using letters. But yeah, so we will use KitKat just to ensure that our application works for a large number of Android devices. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So for now, we don't have to check this. Then we click on finish. Yes. And again, patience. Thinking. Yeah, so as that does what it's doing, we've essentially been able to follow through with the instructions that we've been given. Yeah, so we will get this at the end. So now I'll just press next. Yeah, another thing. So since we know our machines, we know that they're very good machines, but sometimes we need to optimize our chances to have our project, especially our Android projects running. So please make sure if you have windows that you can close or you can afford to close, please close, so that you just don't have way too many things running that can be a big hassle for you. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm just trying to ensure that whatever is necessary, I leave open, whatever is not, I begin closing. So actually what I'm going to do is I might stop my video because I'm doing this thing where I'm using my phone as a webcam. I think you guys have seen my face enough, so it's okay. I can afford to close that. So right now, I'm just having as few windows open as I can afford to. Yeah. So again, patience. These things usually take a bit of a minute to finish, but once it does, should be good to go. So okay. So next is now going to be creating the layout for our app. So we open the layout editor, and how you do that is in the project and double click on the window that's called activity underscore main.xml, which is this one. So you double click it, it should load up something. And it's like I have a couple of stuff loading here. It's taking some time, but again, just patience. I want to know, do you guys have yours ready already? Maybe it's just me. Just type in the chat and let me know if yours is set up properly. Just give me a second to stop sharing. I'll do that again shortly. Am I still audible? Can you guys still hear me? Okay. Do you guys have your Android Studio set up okay, or is it also still going through the same process? Again, no one gets left behind. Joel, do you mind sharing your screen? Maybe we can help debug yours as we wait online, so that like you're working on the same slate.
Okay. CM I tried opening it. It wasn't opening for like 15 minutes. And I was trying to refresh it, and it's now just started. So let's see. Said we're naming it. What again?
Dice roller, capital D, capital R. You can space them out. Yes, and make sure that you. Oh, okay. You can make sure your minimum SDK is KitKat. Yes.
So finish then. I don't know where I'm. I don't know where I'm being back here. That's roller. So
Okay, so let's just wait for it to load a bit. But yeah, you're okay. Kate, is yours okay as well?
Yeah, mine is good.
Okay. So Joel, you can stop sharing, and maybe Kate, you can, just so that like we can move on yours.
Okay.
And then just keep moving. Yeah, but essentially those Gradle processes just take a bit of time loading, but they should finish shortly. Oh, I can see mine is almost done. But yeah, again, just being patient with it. Anyways, I think mine is done. It's okay, Kate. Let me just share mine. Okay. So Joel, just follow along, and then if at all you need me to stop and for you to continue, just let me know.
All right.
Okay. Cool. So in the project window, double click the activity underscore main.xml. So again, what I'll do is just double click this, and we're taken directly to the layout view. So there's a layout view, which is called the design view. And then we have the code view. And then you have the option to split the two this way, such that you can see both your code and your layout. So for now, let's just do it in design view as I've indicated. So we have a central text in the middle called hello world. Yeah, so next what we need to do is create a button in the app, and a button is a user interface element in Android that users can click on. So in this task, you add a button below the hello world text view. So the text view and the button will be located within the constraint layout. So this is a constraint layout. This is basically a kind of layout in Android that you specify. Think of constraint as how we think of coding, right? Or algorithms. You have a problem that has certain constraints, which are like certain limits or certain values that keep you in a certain range. So when you have constraints, you can essentially specify how far from the left should my layout be, how far from the right should it be, how far from the top, how far from the bottom. So that's what the constraint layout does. There are many different layouts. We keep exploring them as we go. But yeah. So yeah, exactly, the type of view group. So when there are views in a view group, the views are considered children to the parent group. So in the case of your app, the text view and the button will be considered children of the parent constraint layout. Yeah, so the children to the main parent layout. So we'll add a button as a child of the existing constraint layout. So how to do that is add a button to the layout, is drag the button from the palette on the design view and positioning it below the hello world text. So the palette is this bit here, right? Yeah. And we can see we have the button here. So what you're going to do is basically click it and then drag it and position it below our text. And try and center that nicely. That way. You can always zoom in over here. So we can have like a better look, but that's how it looks. Yes. So below the palette in the component tree, verify that your button in your text view are listed under the constraint layout as children. So it will be constraint layout, we check that text, and then we have the button. So let's see what we have. So in the component tree, that's this here. I'll just open it, and then you'll see the text view and the button. And then we have like a red thing next to it. It says missing constraints in the constraint layout. Click the badge for details. You can just do that. Then you get more details. But I'll just close this for now and show you what we meant or what it means, the constraints. So you'll notice the error that the button is not constrained. Since the button is sitting within a constraint layout, you must set vertical and horizontal constraints to position it. So how to position the button is that like what you want, or what essentially you want is that this button should fall underneath the hello world text, right? So in the design view at the top edge of the button, press and hold the white circle with a blue border. Drag the pointer and arrow, and an arrow will follow the pointer. So in this, when you see the bottom edge of the hello, oh, sorry, let me see what's in the chat. Okay. Exiting and opening a file I'm not using, I'm sorry. Joel, okay, just, okay, share your screen. I'll talk with yours.
So this file is happening on the new, something I created way back. Open on the phone, and the one that we had created, that guy's roller, I don't know where it's gone. So I haven't touched anything, I haven't closed anything. I was waiting for this great thing to run while I was looking at your screen, and then when I come back here, it's on this file suddenly. So I have no idea what's going on.
Okay, click on file. Let's just see file. And then scroll down to open recent. And let me see. Click manage my project. Let me see that. Okay, that's not it. Just go back to file again. And then just click open. Collapse that Android Studio project. Scroll down. Okay, yeah. So there's a problem there because what's happening is that like your Android Studio project is being taken as a project on its own, not a directory that stores different projects. So what's happening is it's confused between whether to open Android Studio project as a project on its own or whether to go within it and find something like my application, for instance, which is another project. So just go to your file, your folder, your file explorer, and let's fix it. So rename that Android Studio project. just call it my first project or something. Use the, okay, it's okay. Okay, then now you can create, okay, go back to Under Studio, just cancel. Let's create a new project.
I have a question. Every time I close Studio Code and open, it takes me to this happy birthday new thing file thing. I don't even know what it does. Why?
Okay.
I've exited and go back to Android Studio here and open it. It does. Let's see.
Yeah, so what Under Studio does is that when it's opening, it can't open something blank. So what it'll do is that it'll open the initial project that you're working on. So what we'll do now is create a new project. Just go to New Project, Empty Activity, and just call it Dice Roll. For now, don't change the location. Just leave it as it is. Don't change it, just leave it.
Okay.
And then
So just leave it as it is. Then 4.4. And then finish. So let's see. So it's open in
And then I have a question about
this.
what happened. So in your first, there's usually a prompt that Android Studio gives you, whether it's to open project in a new window or open within the same window. So what's happening is when you got that prompt, from my understanding is that like you selected don't show this prompt again and always open in a new window. So what happens is your initial window, which is a happy birthday cake, will always be there, but when you create a new project, it will still appear. So that's the cause of the issue. That's something you can fix offline, but for now, just manually close the happy birthday cake window.
Close it.
That one, the Android Studio project one, yeah.
So it's loading.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time to load, but it's okay. Okay, so let me see, actually let's see how much time we have. So it looks like time has run out, but I'm going to check out on the Slack, have a look at the Slack channel, and we can organize and see if we can have maybe some session later on within the week or something, just so we can finalize on what we have here, because I don't want to go over time. And yeah, we probably have like other engagements and things we need to do. But so far, I'm really glad that we've been able to work on this. We're still yet to finish the pathway 4 as intended by the end of this session, but we'll have to schedule extra time to just go over it and again resolve different problems that we end up running into, because as Joel, you've seen, there are some instances where it's not particularly anything to do with the code, but just more of like things on the laptop that we need to get sorted. But other than that, I really enjoyed having this session, and yeah, that's about it from me.